My name is Elena Mae Carter, and I remember everything about the day they stole my legacy. Not just the money, not just the estate. They stole my birthright with smiles, silk gloves, and documents signed in oak-paneled rooms where I wasn't even invited. I was raised in marble halls and vintage wine cellars in a world where linen napkins had monograms and the fireplace logs were imported. Carter Manor wasn't just a home, it was a throne. And my father, William Carter, was a king in real estate. He wasn't perfect, but he loved me. Of that, I'm sure my mother died when I was 8. 2 years later, Clarice entered our lives with her soft perfume, hushed voice and crocodile eyes, my father's second wife, and soon after 2 half-brothers, Benjamin and Theo, his sons her pawns. They held the reading of the will in a law firm that practically raised me. Jonathan Fielding, my father's lawyer, and a man who once said I reminded him of William more than anyone, sat behind a mahogany desk, looking at me like I was a stranger. I wasn't supposed to be there. They told me it was a closed family proceeding, but I came anyway. Jonathan read the will, his voice like gravel in an echo chamber. To my beloved wife, Clarisse, I leave full managerial control and 60% equity of Carter Holdings. To my sons Benjamin and Theo, joint ownership of Remington Manor and remaining stock options. A pause. A chill. Then to my daughter, Elena Mae Carter. I leave my personal journals and a note. She has the strength to build her own legacy. That was it. No stake in the company I helped stabilize during the 2020 crash. No share of the estate I grew up in. Just a note, she has the strength, as if strength paid rent. As if strength rebuilt a life. I didn't speak, I didn't cry, I didn't even blink. I just stared at Clarice, who smiled at me like I was a child, being taught a hard but necessary lesson. Benjamin scrolled through his phone. Theo tried to meet my eyes, but failed. They knew. They all knew. I walked out with a copy of the will and nothing else. Jonathan, a man who once called me family, didn't even offer a handshake. But in that elevator, staring at my own hollow reflection in the mirrored walls, I made a decision. Not out of emotion, out of strategy. I wouldn't fight for scraps. I wouldn't beg to be let back in. I would build something so powerful they'd never be able to ignore me again. The irony. That same week, I received a gold-foiled invitation to Clarisse's philanthropy soiree, hosted at Carter Manor, my childhood home. They had sent it to the wrong address, a one-bedroom walk-up with no AC and a faulty fridge where I lived. Alone and visible, while they toasted champagne under the chandeliers my mother picked out. I vanished after that, not to hide, but to rebuild. They thought they'd written me out of the story. What they didn't realize was that I was about to rewrite the ending. I'm Elena Mae Carter, and this isn't a sob story. This is the prelude to conquest. I didn't leave town that day. I evaporated. No calls, no posts, no trace. I shed the Carter name like a burnt silk dress, painful to peel off but necessary for rebirth. I checked out of the penthouse I could no longer afford, dropped the Carter Holdings key card on the front desk, and stepped into a world where my last name meant nothing, which is exactly what I needed. My new name was E.M. Carter, just initials, cold, unemotional. I registered it as an LLC. That name bought my first 3 properties. That name built a network of shell companies across 3 states. That name didn't smile, didn't beg, didn't get left out of anything. I started with small investments, foreclosed duplexes, undervalued brownstones, and vacant land outside city limits. I wasn't flashy, I was quiet. The kind of quiet that unnerves people when they realize you've been 3 steps ahead the entire time. I studied everything: law, contracts, tax codes. I knew how to hide assets, track wire transfers, and read estate filings like bedtime stories. I became fluent in litigation, fluent in corporate sabotage, fluent in the language they used to lock me out, only this time I was rewriting the grammar. By the end of my first year underground, my portfolio was worth $2 million. By the second, I doubled it. Not with luck, with leverage. I partnered with people who never asked questions, only looked at numbers. I gave them profits, they gave me access. And slowly, quietly, I bought my way into boardrooms where the Carter name was still whispered like gospel. They never realized that the woman across the table signing contracts as EM was the same girl Clarice had once called emotionally unfit for inheritance. I didn't need revenge. Not yet. I needed data. So I made friends with shadows, hired private investigators to follow Clarisse's accountant. Subscribed to Theo's private Instagram under a fake wellness account. Sent an anonymous tip to the IRS about Benjamin's offshore slush fund. No one suspected me. They had forgotten I existed, but I hadn't forgotten anything. The key piece came on a rainy Tuesday in April. My investigator handed me a USB drive and said only, "You're going to enjoy this. Inside were scanned documents." wire transfers from my father's trust to Clarissa's private account, dated 6 weeks before he died, and one audio file. It was my father, his voice weaker than I remembered saying, "I don't want the trust altered without Elena's sign-off. Make sure Jonathan knows that I played it 5 times." Not because I needed to believe it, but because it was the first time in years I'd heard someone defend me, even in a whisper, even in secret. That audio file was not just evidence, it was fuel. Clarice had forged authorization to redirect assets before the will was even changed. Jonathan had covered it up. Benjamin and Theo were just eager little vultures circling the table. I didn't cry. I laughed, quietly into the night, the kind of laugh that sounds more like breathing out centuries of suppressed fury. With that evidence, I could go to court, but not yet. Timing was everything. And besides, I had one more move to make, the house Remington Manor. The 12-bedroom mansion overlooking the lake. The house where my mother hung the gold-framed wedding photo above the fireplace. The place Clarice now threw family brunches for influencers and donors, acting like she'd built the damn walls herself. That house was never hers. It was my father's legacy and my inheritance. And soon, without them even realizing it, it would be mine. They say revenge is best served cold, but I didn't want revenge. I wanted control. I wanted them to smile at strangers, sip champagne on balconies, and sleep soundly in bedrooms they didn't know I already owned on paper. I wanted them to walk barefoot on marble floors. I paid for. I wanted the air they breathed to come with a rent invoice bearing my signature. They thought I was gone, but the truth is I've just been busy building the empire they thought they stole from me, and in a few short weeks, they'll wake up and find out they live in a house that belongs to me. 3 years. That's how long I waited before making my move. 3 years of them thinking they won. 3 years of me studying every loophole, every clause, every signature that wasn't theirs to forge. I didn't want to make noise. I wanted to break them in silence like a whisper slipping under a locked door. And when the moment came, I didn't send a warning. I sent a lawsuit, filed at 9:01 a.m. on a Tuesday. Civil Court, New York County, filed under the name E.M. Carter, Executor, contested. The grounds: fraudulent transfer of trust assets, misrepresentation of mental competency, forged authorization for estate restructuring, malicious exclusion of a direct heir. The moment the court clerk stamped it, everything shifted. Their accounts froze. The Carter Holdings Board panicked. Remington Manor was flagged for review as part of a disputed inheritance asset. And Clarice. She got served during a brunch photo shoot in the Rose Garden. The look on her face was described to me as champagne to spit ratio, catastrophic. Benjamin posted a passive-aggressive quote on social media. Theo tried to call me. Twice. I didn't answer. I didn't file the suit to win back what they took. I filed it to drag them into light, to force them into a room where they couldn't lie behind closed doors anymore. Courtrooms are beautiful like that. No curated Instagram stories, no charming speeches, just evidence, timelines, truth. And I had all three. When the hearing date came, I wore black, no jewelry, no statement bag, just a single folder, inside, copies of trust transfers audio of my father requesting my approval, handwritten notes from Jonathan's archives. A forensic handwriting analysis proving Clarice had signed my name once, years ago, to approve a property sale. I wasn't out for blood, I was out for confirmation. I wanted it on record. I wanted it read aloud that they stole what was mine. That I wasn't forgotten, I was removed. Clarice walked into court like it was another gala pearls. A cream pantsuit, that air of rehearsed dignity, but dignity doesn't hold up well under cross-examination. When her lawyer tried to explain the emotional instability that led to my removal from the will, I simply slid the audio recording to the judge. Make sure Jonathan knows I want Elena involved. She's the only one who understands the numbers. The courtroom was silent. Clarice blinked once, and then again, slower. Jonathan didn't show. He sent a lawyer with a settlement offer. It was printed on heavy cardstock as if weight made betrayal more dignified. The amount $4 million, a consolation prize. I declined without reading past the number. The judge requested a private sidebar with my counsel. After 20 minutes of deliberation, he returned to the bench and said, "Due to credible evidence of misconduct and manipulation during the estate's final structuring, I am authorizing a temporary hold on all Carter Family Trust disbursements and real estate holdings under dispute, effective immediately." Clarice opened her mouth. The judge raised a hand. She closed it. They were too stunned to realize this wasn't the end. It was the intermission. I wasn't just winning back what was stolen, I was stripping their armor piece by piece. They'd have to prove every dollar they spent since my father's death wasn't fraudulently obtained. They'd have to explain every family trust disbursement and Remington Manor. Now, under court review, they couldn't renovate, couldn't sell, couldn't even change the damn Wi-Fi provider without court approval. Clarice called a press conference. She said it was a personal attack rooted in childhood resentment. She tried to paint herself as a stepmother, holding the family together in difficult times. A journalist from the Wall Street Journal asked why the court had accepted my evidence if it was so baseless. Clarice paused, and I smiled from my living room, because for the first time in years she had no script. I didn't show my face publicly. That would come later. For now, I let the silence speak, I let the subpoenas speak louder, and I let the internet ask the questions I never had to answer. Why was the daughter written out if she helped build the company? Why are the assets frozen if everything was legal? Who is E.M. Carter, and why is she suddenly everywhere? They'd built their life off the illusion of a family that stuck together, but illusions crack under pressure, especially when the spotlight hits just right, and now that it had, the cracks were spreading. They were still sleeping peacefully in my father's house when I bought it. Remington Manor, 12 bedrooms, 2 grand staircases, 1 private dock, and a deed that no longer had their name on it. I didn't need to kick them out. I just needed to own the land beneath their feet. The court had frozen most of the family's assets. Clarisse couldn't touch the trust. The company was under federal audit, and with mounting legal fees, she needed liquidity. I knew she'd sell something. She had no choice, and I knew exactly what it would be. Remington Manor had always been Clarisse's crown jewel. But even queens pawn their jewels when war knocks. She listed it quietly through a private firm, hoping no one would connect the dots. She priced it low, assuming she'd get it back someday, that she'd buy it back when things blew over. She didn't realize I was the one watching the listing. I didn't bid directly. I used a holding company, Ashmore Properties, LLC, incorporated in Delaware, masked through a Swiss blind trust. The perfect shadow. No questions, no red flags. They saw a buyer with a clean history and full cash offer. The sale closed in 11 days. And just like that, Remington Manor, my childhood home, was mine again. They didn't even know. For a full week, they celebrated like survivors. Benjamin bragged online about refocusing the family legacy. Clarisse held a garden brunch for inner circle investors. Theo posted a video of himself sipping wine under the pergola, and not one of them read the fine print in the letter that arrived Monday morning. The envelope was cream, the seal gold, elegant, tasteful. Inside a formal notice of ownership transfer, Ashmore Properties now held full title to the estate. Enclosed was a residential lease agreement for 12 months with terms of occupancy, monthly rent, and usage restrictions. The tone was polite, detached, surgical. You may continue to reside at Remington Manor under the following conditions. No renovations without written consent. No subleasing, hosting public events, or branding the residence under the Carter family name. Monthly rent due on the first. Late fees apply. Failure to comply will result in eviction. Theo called the real estate firm in a panic. They confirmed everything. Clarisse screamed at her assistant. Benjamin asked his lawyer to reverse the sale too late. It was ironclad that night. Clarisse went live on social media and said the house had been temporarily transferred for legal reasons. But even her most loyal followers could hear the tremble in her voice. I watched it all from a penthouse window across town, sipping espresso like it was champagne. It wasn't revenge I tasted, it was closure, power balance. They had reduced me to a footnote, now they were tenants in my house. The lease was signed the next morning. They didn't thank me. Of course not, they didn't know it was me. Ashmore Properties was just a name, a ghost, just like I had been for years. The first rent payment came in the next week, $12,000. It was wired to an account they couldn't trace, buried under 4 shell corporations and a quiet account in Luxembourg. Clarisse probably thought she was outsmarting someone. She had no idea she was feeding the very machine I built out of the bones of my own exclusion. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at their door again. This time it wasn't from the holding company. It was from me, personal hand-signed on Carter letterhead. The real one, designed by my mother, preserved in my files, reclaimed through the legal settlement that hadn't even hit the press yet. Inside a single sentence, let me know if you'd like to extend your lease after next year. Rent may be subject to market adjustments. No signature, just a monogram. EMC. Clarisse went silent for days. No more brunches, no new photos, just silence. Benjamin deleted half his tweets. Theo deactivated his Instagram. The Carter brand wasn't dying, it was being reclaimed. I didn't throw them out, I didn't embarrass them. That's what they would have done to me. But I wasn't here to scream, I was here to own, to rewrite the terms of our story. And now every room they walk through, every glass they pour, every candle they light in that house, it all happens under my terms. The servants don't know. The staff they hired to maintain the house still refer to Clarisse as Mrs. Carter. Let them, I don't need the credit. I just need the silence. When she walks down the marble hallway and hears her own footsteps echo too loudly, Because in that echo she knows. She doesn't walk alone anymore. She walks in the house I bought, she walks on my floors, and she pays me for the privilege they still live in the house. That part surprises people. They assume I would evict them, humiliate them, drag their designer luggage down marble steps and bolt the iron gates behind them. But that's not power, that's noise. And I stopped needing noise the day I realized silence was my inheritance. The rent comes in on the first of every month, $12,000. On time, without fail. They never speak my name, not in public, not in private, but they live with the consequence of every decision they made and every silence they left me drowning in. Each room is a reminder. The study, my father's favorite. They turned it into a bar. I watched a live stream once, Clarisse toasting her resilience with imported whiskey. She laughed beside donors who'd never heard of me. She didn't realize the mahogany desk behind her was one of the only items I never let the court reassign. It's still registered under my name. Every drink she pours is against my furniture clause. I never said a word, I just billed her. They thought I'd come back with fire, but I returned, as fog creeping quiet. Everywhere. I didn't need a throne. I became the architect of the floor they walk on. Then came the gala Clarisse's return to society. A charity event held, of course, at Remington Manor. A masquerade, no less. I got the invitation. Engraved gilded edges sent to E.M. Carter SQ by mistake. They didn't realize I was the primary owner of the event space. They didn't realize their permits required my sign-off. I signed them, and I showed up. I didn't wear a mask. I didn't need to. When I stepped through those double doors in a black tailored suit and silence, at my heels the room split open like a wound. Clarisse froze mid-laugh. Benjamin dropped his glass. Theo stared like he'd seen a ghost. I didn't approach them, didn't even offer a nod. I walked straight to the center of the room, took the microphone from the MC with steady fingers and said 4 words, "Welcome to my home." A gasp, then silence. Then the low hum of whispers multiplying like wildfire. Clarisse started to step forward, but I turned my back. Not out of disrespect, out of conclusion. The moment wasn't for her, it was for me. I gave a short speech on legacy, on reclamation, on the power of rebuilding what others try to erase. I didn't mention them, not once. But everyone knew, the guests clapped, the press circled, and my name, my real name, trended for the first time in years. Not as a scandal, not as a daughter who vanished, but as a woman who came back without needing permission. After the event, Clarisse cornered me in the solarium alone. She tried to speak some mix of apology, justification, and carefully rehearsed grief. I held up my hand. "This conversation doesn't exist," I said. "Just like I didn't exist in that will." She flinched. Not because I raised my voice, but because I didn't. She asked what I wanted. I told her the truth. "Nothing. You're already paying." That night, I sat by the old fountain on the east lawn. The one my mother loved. I watched the lights fade from the windows one by one. The house looked smaller now, or maybe I'd just grown. The anger was gone. All that remained was the echo of my father's voice in that audio recording, asking for me to be included. It wasn't revenge. It was restoration. He wanted me to be part of the legacy, so I took it, not with force, with finesse. Today I still own Remington Manor. I turned the East Wing into a mentorship space for women building businesses from nothing. I fund scholarships. Quietly, no press, no photo ops. Because legacies aren't built through headlines. They're built in silence, in strategy, in rooms they once told you weren't allowed to enter. Benjamin still lives there. He walks carefully now. Theo moved out, started writing. Last, I heard he dedicated a short story to a sister who deserved better. Maybe that was his version of an apology. As for Clarisse, she still hosts events, still wears pearls. But the staff say she avoids the West Hallway. The one with the oil painting of William Carter and his daughter unveiled last month. She didn't attend the ceremony. My name is Elena May Carter. I was written out of my family's story. So I wrote a better one where the girl they dismissed became the landlord, where the outsider owned the inside, and where silence, sharp, deliberate, unbreakable, was the final word.